closer to enlightenment than others?
Clever question. Let's try and understand why is somebody asking this question. Either to feel that, oh, I'm closer because I was born closer, so it's going to be easier, or to completely reject this whole idea of enlightenment because I was born so far away, it is not for me. No, this question is a trap. Don't fall into this trap. Everybody is born with the same amount of ignorance, same amount of intelligence. Every child is born with the same potential. So, this idea that somebody can take birth with more propensity for enlightenment, more chances of becoming enlightened, is just pure illusion, which is not at all true. See, when you say somebody can take birth and they are a little more closer to enlightenment than you are, then what are you trying to say? You're trying to say that somewhere existence has made a separation between that individual and you. Somewhere existence wants that individual to become awakened and not you. And existence doesn't function this way. Existence is not partial, it is totally impartial. It is what an organism does after taking birth, the kind of thoughts it generates, the kind of experiences it is subjected to, the kind of life it lives, that is what determines whether it's closer or farther. If you were to pick up one ant from a colony of ants, that ant will have exactly the same possibilities as rest of the ants. There will be no one ant that will be extremely super intelligent, super conscious from the rest of them. If it was like that, it would not have been an ant. It would not have been a part of that colony. It would have been something else. See, this idea of superiority, you can be born superior, is a wrong idea. See, the moment you go into these, then you're going into a very speculative understanding of life. Then who is to say who will become enlightened, who will not become enlightened? Now, if you can talk about superiority and inferiority at birth, about enlightenment, then you can apply the same logic to anything and everything. Somebody is born intelligent, somebody is born dumb, somebody is born smart, you know, somebody is born very dull. Why all these things? Yes, there are some births, maybe a mental defect or physical body defect, a rare occurrence. But even that is not a defect, it is how you look at it. Compared to the human phenomenon, a person who's born lame or blind or deaf or dumb would look like a limitation. But for existence, he is not a limitation. It's just one of his senses have been compromised for the sake of other senses. But his ability to become enlightened is always the same. See, try and understand what is enlightenment. Enlightenment is not an achievement, it is not an attainment. It is not something outside of you. It is not something that you will develop. Enlightenment is a realization of who you are. So, who you are can never change. For everybody, who you are is always the same. So, how can one individual have a better chances of becoming enlightened than another? Because it is just a realization, it is just knowing who you are. Yes, over a period of time, through the different processes of upbringing, the different processes of learning, two individuals can be either closer or farther from enlightenment. Now, in that sense, everybody on this planet is somewhere on that scale. Somebody is so closer, somebody is farther. And how do you know this? A person who's more aware of himself, who's more aware of his thoughts, is a little closer to enlightenment because he can direct his mind and body to attain enlightenment because he is more aware of it. A person who's totally unconscious of his internal faculties, unconscious of his thinking, unconscious of his bodily process, a person who's simply lost in thought most of the time, it's difficult because first they need to gather their thoughts to one place and then direct them. So if you've been already putting some effort in terms of becoming aware of your thoughts, then you're getting closer and closer. So this differentiation happens after birth, not at birth. See, there are some stories where this differentiation begins from the womb. It depends on the environment that is around that child. For example, the child is in the womb and you're sitting and listening to an enlightened teacher. I mean, this is what in India we say. Arjuna started learning archery while he was in the womb itself. Now, this is severe disadvantage for other kids. I mean, if he were to go to Olympics, he will win every time because he's been learning from the womb. Can you beat that? Usually kids start learning from 3 years, 4 years. I mean, certain sports, they have to learn very early. But from the womb, he'll be unbeatable. These are stories. This is how the moment a person acquires certain greatness of any skill, you want to attribute it to his birth. You want to attribute it to the womb. You want to give credit to the parents. While he was in the womb, he was just a child. He did not even have a bow and arrow there. How would he know how to shoot? Wouldn't the arrow come out of the mummy's tummy? No. He was just a child. I mean, psychologically, if you go a little deeper, you can say, see, although the child is not practicing archery, it is listening. But the child is not interpreting, it does not know how to interpret the language. These are only sounds and sensations and vibrations, that's all. I mean, there's no intelligence, there's no awareness to interpret. When the mother says arrow, it's like, what is arrow for the child? Nothing. So these are all our ideas. So you don't learn from the womb. And it's not even immediately after your birth. First thing that you're trying to learn is, why am I here? Ah, why am I here? The child is not ready to learn archery or enlightenment or this or that. It is just completely distraught with fear. What the hell happened? Why am I here? What is happening? And it takes next few years to slowly gather its senses and realize that, oh, this is where I'm going to be now. I got to figure out how to live here. For the first few years, the child will always be living thinking that it's just momentary. So it never tries to learn in a conscious way. It just exists. And then slowly when it becomes more self-conscious and realizes that, oh, I have a name, I have a form, and I'm like others, and I need to learn what they have learned, that is when this idea, oh, I need to know who I am, or there is something called as enlightenment. Everybody is born with equal potential. So you are as close to enlightenment as your neighbor. So if somebody has progressed a little more, if you think that, oh, they know all these things, then you have not put in the effort. But if somebody claims that they were enlightened right from birth, run away from them. Nobody is born enlightened. It is an idea people misuse to fool people. A lot of things happen like this. Understand this. Some process should have happened for a person to become enlightened. Isolation, silence. He has to sit quiet. Now, whether you call it meditation or devotion or love, this and that, it doesn't matter. But if you analyze the life of that person, take anybody, Ramana Maharshi, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Sai Baba, take anybody, if you observe their life, you will see that there is a point in time in their life when they were totally isolated, separated. And that is why enlightenment doesn't happen to business tycoons or people who are like so busy in the world trying to create something, do something. It doesn't happen to them because it needs a certain kind of isolation, certain kind of separation. If you analyze the lives of awakened beings, you will see they've spent a lot of time being alone. Now, if somebody says they're just born enlightened and they've always been around people, they've never experienced this silence and stillness, they're just fooling you. I mean, this is not even, you know, such a big problem. There are people who manifest stones, pearls, diamonds from their mouth. Pure nonsense. Nobody can do all these things. But this is what they claim. This is one of Nityananda's disciples. I mean, she calls herself a disciple, but then she wears all this jewelry, you know, right from earrings to necklace to everything. All fake jewelry, not real jewelry. Okay, she wears all this, and then she says, I will teach you how to manifest a diamond. Okay. So first she says, okay, just watch everything very closely. First she eats some bananas. And she says, see, there's nothing in this banana. If there is something stuck in my mouth, it would just go in. So there's nothing stuck in my mouth. I don't have any diamond, nothing. So she eats the bananas. And then she drinks the water. And then she tells the camera to come closer and she shows her ugly mouth. See, there's nothing there. And then she does this. And she takes it out. It's a perfectly cut diamond. It's not even a raw stone. It's a diamond that is cut. If they're creating such illusions, at least they should have had the common sense to think that diamonds are not cut. It is human beings who cut the diamond. Diamond is raw. It doesn't shine like, a cut diamond. This is a perfectly cut diamond she takes out. And she says, see, you can manifest this. There are all kinds of idiotic things people say. Because since it's not a part of your experience, you can just go on saying whatever you want. No. Everybody is born with the same potential to become enlightened, and nobody is born enlightened. You take birth because you're not enlightened. The very process of taking birth is you have slipped from that consciousness. You have forgotten that. See, think about it. You cannot be a child if you remember that you are everything. Only when you forget it, that forgetfulness itself is a child, isn't it? That innocence itself is a child. That not knowingness itself is a child. That ignorance itself is a child. Now, when you say this child is conscious, this child is enlightened, then you are contradicting the very process. So, an awakened child is not even a child. And an adult cannot take birth directly. You have to take birth like the child. These are laws of nature, laws of existence. Nobody can change it. Everybody is born with the same potential, and nobody is born enlightened. You need to take birth, go through all this pain and struggle and learning. There's no escape from this. And then you need to begin your quest and find it. This process has always been the same for everybody. But after an awakened person dies and his stories are being narrated, sometimes we backtrack a little too much. For example, when we describe the stories of Buddha, since Buddhists have fallen in love with this idea of enlightenment and they love Buddha so much, they start narrating even his childhood stories as if he was enlightened. For example, he was sitting under a mango tree. There is a story that is narrated when Buddha was very young, maybe 3 or 4. He was sitting under a mango tree and he was watching his parents, friends and relatives tilling the land to plant some seeds, and he's sitting and watching those worms. Some worms are being crushed under the tiller, they're dying, and all these worms are being unearthed, and the sun is shining on them and they're struggling. So they say he's understanding the meaning of suffering. He's a 3-year-old boy. And then they say, and then the sun became so hot and the parents completely forgot that he was sitting there, and the shadow of the tree did not change just so that it can protect the Buddha from the sunlight.
Sounds like something that came out of the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, these stories are pretty idiotic. To say that Buddha is so special that even the tree changed its nature. Instead of, if the sun is shining like this, shadow is supposed to be here, the shadow is there to protect the child. These are all our emotional desires and we backtrack it. That is why we say Krishna was born enlightened. You know, all his childhood activities, he was a thief, he was a flirt. Just because after a while he became enlightened, all these things became his divine Leela. Stealing is called Leela. Leela means his play. He was just playing. He had hundreds of girlfriends. He was just playing. That is his divine nature. That is his Leela. Why don't you allow all of us to do that? He used to steal the clothes of women when they used to go take bath. These are all very mischievous, unlawful things somebody can do. But in India, all these things, these stories are narrated in a very divine way. Ah, he used to innocently steal the clothes of women. He wanted to look at them naked. He was a young boy. He was always making mischief. Everybody takes birth normally. Even Krishna took birth like a normal boy. He grew up. Over a period of time, stories get exaggerated. As I said, if somebody had a video camcorder, if they would have recorded what Krishna was doing when he was a child, they would have had no doubt that he's just a normal boy. It's all our projections.